and improve his idea 3 times in a single sentence. To me, that's pretty awesome, that we can actually do that. And if you want to discuss, well, if you want to discuss crypto, talk to Steve. If you want anybody to, completely crack your crypto, Steve's your man. So take it away, Steve.
Thank you. So when I was over at the speaker room, I was working away, and then my name was called, so I was like, what? So I have no time to mentally prepare, so still on edge a little. So Auth for encrypted services with server-side APT. So you're authenticating into a server that is already owned. So who is this talk for? This is for people that are actually making encrypted services that would want to implement this, and for users to know that there's something that's really good out there. So there's 3 places where you can put the keys. There's Brain Wallet, where your public key is generated, well, your private key is generated from password KDF, and the public key, given that anyone can start trying to guess what your password was. Key file, this, it's like PGP. You have a file on your computer that has your private key that you decrypt with a password. Then key service, that's where you have some company has a server where they store so a user generates a cryptographic key, then encrypts it with their password, and then that's stored somehow on the server. So that's what I'm actually going to be talking most about, because the first one, that's less secure because everyone can crack it. The second one, that's it's not it's harder for users because they have to deal with moving the key everywhere. But then the third one, the key's always, you just log in. So before we even authenticate, you want to run the password KDF once and generate 2 keys, the authentication key and the encryption key. Caveat, PBKDF2, each block is done independently, so you can actually, it's bad for doing something like this because someone could just spend half the time and just generate one of the keys or something like that. So you would either have to use HKDF afterwards or something. So I'm going to go quickly over these, but so these were just some of the things that I found. So Crypho, they had a basically to get the password encrypted private key, all you needed was a 6-digit code that was like top P. I forgot. Yeah. So that's now fixed. There was no rate limiting or anything, so that was that. Proton Mail, they're like, oh, we'll have an authentication key or a password and a decryption password, but I'm pretty sure most users are going to use the same password. And the first one's just sent plain text, like logging into a web page. Mega, do some crazy shit with AES a bunch of times. Then to authenticate, they do a bunch of extra steps. So if you were to actually get the data that's on Mega's servers, you have to do a lot less computations. So, and since it's not salted for the first part, everyone with the same password has the same key. I'm pretty sure. I forgot. I'm pretty sure. But you'd have to check each one, like decrypting to make sure it actually worked or not. Nagori, Google Sync. So they use PBKDF2 4 different times with varying. Oh, you can't read that at all now that it's 800 by 600. Oops. Anyways, so, and the first one's done on static data, so then you generate like a MAC key, which if you're actually attacking, if you actually had the data from there, you would just do the static one first. That generates the salt, and then always use that again, and then just generate the MAC key one by doing 1,004 iterations. Whatever. They use PBKDF2 3 times with min PBKDF2 round, which is 1,000. Then their SRP, they use bcrypt 10. So then they hash that for the actual key. But if you're going to attack this, you're just going to attack the 1,000 round PBKDF2. So since we're talking about SRP, PAKE. It's a password authenticated key exchange. So basically Diffie-Hellman, but there's a key mixed password key, whatever, mixed in. That makes it so that anyone in between the two ends that are trying to connect, you can't like man in the middle or modify or like get any information from that. You can't crack the password from any of the information going back and forth. So this is, so the way you would use it is you would generate the two keys, the authentication key and the encryption key. Then you would use that to do the PAKE connection. Then over that channel, the server would send you the encrypted master key. It's the password encrypted master key. Then you would just decrypt that, and then you'd have your master key. Can we make this better? Yes, we can. So if you had an HSM and you have the server hold an encrypted blob of all the information that was necessary from before, the HSM is the only one that has the decryption key for that. So when a client comes in, you do a database lookup, send that over to the HSM decrypts it, then is able to do the PAKE connection. Then you, over that channel, you send over the password encrypted master key. So nothing in between the HSM and the client can man in the middle of this. So, and no one can get any information about the password or anything like that. So, can we make this any better? Yes. We can generate 2 session keys and give the second one back to the server. So now the server can actually have its own protected channel that it can talk to the client. So now, granted, that talks about advanced persistent threats on the server. This wouldn't help with that because the endpoint is the server now. But anything from the server to the client can't man in the middle. So changing passwords. This is actually extremely easy. It's the same exact thing as before, except for instead of receiving the password encrypted master key, you send that information along with the PAKE information so that the server can actually authenticate with you. Then it encrypts that data, sends it to the server to be stored in the database.
You want to keep the key that's private key that's stored. You change the password.
No. Well, yeah, yes. The master key is still, yes. The master key is still the same. You can do, like, if you wanted to, you could do, basically, like, revoking keys and, like, generating everything new and pulling down all your data, re-encrypting it, and putting it back. But, yeah. So, new users. So, there's no password that the server already has. Well, the HSM can do the PAKE connection. So the HSM would need a public-private key pair that the public key is baked into the client's client software. And so it would request an ephemeral key, get that, then do an ephemeral Diffie-Hellman thing, and then send over the information to the encrypted I'm talking in circles. I see blank faces. So the information from before when you change your password, that information would be sent over the ephemeral Diffie-Hellman key exchange. Yeah. Can I have? Oh. I can has. Thank you. I messed up twice. The answer is yes. So, the nice thing about this is if you add the two-factor authentication information into the encrypted blob that is stored in the database and have the HSM do the authentication for the second factor, you eliminate online password guessing. But you can't do any counters because that requires the HSM to change, re-encrypt the blob, send it to the server, and the server would just be like, "Whoops, it's the same one," and just keep on replaying the same counter for the user. And there, yeah. So there's U2F. That's universal second factor. There are some problems with it. There's tracking, which is the combination of the attestation key? Attestation. I asked someone. They're like, I don't know either. So the attestation key and the counter that's in the protocol, when you combine both of those, you can narrow down to a smaller percentage, it gets you down to a smaller group of what you think could be who they are by across sites from. But there's ways to mitigate that with multiple counters and buckets and stuff. But from the spec, that's optional, so you don't know what you're buying when. Then there's poor multi-token support, which is so when you press the button, the server doesn't know when you're trying to authenticate, the server doesn't know which dongle it is, so it just sends the first key over, and you press the button, and then it'll fail, and it'll send the second one, the third one, the fourth one, and keep on going down the line. This is why there's a 10-second window, but that's also a problem, because if you press the button, anyone else, if your computer's owned, yes, I know, but if your computer's owned, if you press that button, it literally can log you into anything it wants in that 10-second window. It's better to have that button be just one, and I didn't get in, I might be owned, or I got in, I'm good. Then that's basically user presence versus user authorizing. But it's not really authorizing because someone could steal the button press. So the way to fix multi-token support is just use the username during registration, send that over to the U2F. But that would require a protocol change, and then you just do a HKDF on that and a secret key and whatever. But it's the best we got. It's actually really good. There's one really cool thing that it can do. You can sign the actual SSL key so that you're not being man in the middle. So for Superfish, that would have been detected really fast if U2F was used everywhere. So TNC gap. This was a thing I came up with last year. It was for so I was watching Hack5 and they were doing air-gapped PGP, and they were trying to use the camera to do QR code transfers and stuff. And I was like, so what this is two TNCs that are soldered together. They talk to each other. Basically, it shows up as a serial port on either end. And basically, the TNC gap enforces the protocol. So hopefully, if well, if let's say your laptop is owned or, well, actually, I guess you can. Well, if your laptop's owned, you're screwed anyway. So your air-gapped laptop or whatever, well, teensy gap, this would, I'm going too long on this. Oh, well. Basically, you would get email in, and then when you want to send an email, it would just turn the light on, and then you would press the button. Then it would allow one email to be sent. And then you could add like a LCD screen with like the hash of the message that was going to be sent, so that you could verify that. You know, although if your computer's owned, when you actually do the hash on your computer, it would show up as the same. But if you were to use this with Raspberry Pi, so you have the Raspberry Pi as the HSM, and then it's connected to a server through that. Well, now the button's not really useful. Then what you can do is, this is the like ghetto way of getting an HSM, because there's not one that actually does the PAKE connection and everything I've been talking about. But if you do this, then hopefully the operating system isn't backdoored. But if it is, it might have, the only communication it has to the outside world is through a serial port with, it wouldn't know how to talk to the teensy gap. But it might be able to find out, so it's not really like this isn't a secure solution, obviously, but it's nearish. Wait, what? Questions?
Questions?
Yeah.
Oh, well, sure. I mean, what I see is that I really need to dedicate, myself more fully to my drinking.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was told to add photos, so
yes,
I was like,
It's my fault. I told Steve that, and that is because, I'm seriously, I suck at math. So I told him, put in some clip out or something. And there's one rule, for those who want to submit for passwords coming in the future, I'm going to just do this. Back in December 2012, when I had Steve at the University in Oslo doing a talk, we had a German professor, Marcus Buhmann, and he introduced the concept of using kittens in the presentation for one specific purpose. If you have one or more introductory slides that basically describe, the basics, background stuff that everybody's supposed to know, put a kitten on the slide so that you don't get bored, you can look at the pretty kitten instead. And I'm trying to tell you. That's a good I love the concept of doing that. Steve,
I had kittens. Then yeah, I had kittens. But then I was like, this is funny.
yeah.
This is hilarious.
Okay.
Okay, but if there are no questions,
No, I actually have a contentful question.
Yeah.
Given that you're doing PAKE stuff on your HSM, how much is that putting more of a burden compute power requirements on an HSM than is typical of the kinds of devices that are available now?
I don't need that. But, yeah. So there's the Yubico. Oh, that's what I forgot. Anyways, so the yeah, there's the Yubico HSM. That just does symmetric key stuff, so it's super fast in comparison. For this, you need to do 3 elliptic curve multiplications and 2 additions. So it's faster than RSA, I think.
Oh.
And Diffie-Hellman, but
I just had one comment. We designed a very similar scheme for Firefox accounts the first time around, second time around about 2 years ago. The thing that caused us to abandon it was that needing to do the stretching on the client side before you put it into the PAKE operation was kind of unpredictable. Like, we had very, very slow, cheap phones doing it, powerful desktop machines, and we couldn't get a consistent enough experience with that on that side. And then I also recognizing there were some other problems to it where we weren't really getting as much security out of it as we wanted relative to the complexity and the kind of burden we were putting on the client side, which is why we then backed away from that stuff. So it's really cool, and I totally support what you're doing. There's some practical stuff that caused us problems when we tried to pursue it.
Thank you.
More questions?
Yeah, I think I had a related question was, for PAKEs, the server has to store some verification info, right?
Yeah, it's
Either
encrypted by the HSM. And then it's handed over to the HSM, decrypted by it, contained in there, and then does the connection.
Okay. Thanks.
More questions? Okay, well, thank you, Steve.